The first exercise is called a reverse crunch. So I'm lifting myself up with my core. This movement would be super, super easy if I was using my legs to lift me, but I'm not. I'm using my core. So pull your core in and pull upwards with your core. This should be felt so deep inside your core. Even just holding my legs up and pressing my lower back against the floor without any movement is really difficult for me. So if that's difficult for you, you might just want to stop there, or you can try to lift your legs up like I'm doing now. You can see it's literally a couple of inches of movement. I'm not using any type of momentum. I'm not using my legs to lift me. I'm using my legs as dead weight. And this exercise is really going to help with those of us who have lazy tummies and have a tendency to let our stomach just kind of pop out rather than holding it tightly in. The next exercise is a rear delt pull. So this is targeting the backs of your shoulders. So what I'm doing is I'm grasping my hands and I'm pulling my hands apart while holding on. So I'm really feeling this in the rear side of my shoulders. This is extremely difficult if you're doing it properly. So really get a good grasp with your fingers and then pull your arms apart. And you can even see my upper body shaking. And you want to make sure your shoulders are back and down away from your ears, and just keep that resistance on. Just keep pulling, pulling, pulling. If this isn't difficult for you, then try pulling a little bit harder, because this should be extremely difficult. This is amazing for your posture. Most of us were dominant in the front of our shoulders, so this is helping make the rear of our shoulders stronger so that it opens our chest up. The next exercise is a single arm kneeling row. So I'm not using my arm at all to come up. I'm just using my back. So you can see my back muscles engaged. I'm really just using my arm as dead weight like before with the legs. My arms aren't doing any of the movement. It is solely my back that's lifting my shoulders and arms backwards. So this takes a lot of mental thought and a lot of mind-body connection. So really be thinking about those back muscles and really squeezing on every repetition. And this is again going to help increase our posture by pulling our shoulder blades back so that we don't have a roundness in our upper back, which many of us do. It's just getting us in the habit of using those back muscles and helping engage those back muscles, which are so good for your posture. All right, this is a reverse pulsing fly. So my shoulders are back and down, and I'm really lifting my arms backwards with my back. So again, I'm not using my arms in this movement. I'm just using my back to keep my arms up above the air. And again, this is the same thing as before. This is going to help strengthen your upper back so that your chest can open up and you can have much better posture. So many of us are very rounded in the upper back and tight in the chest. So this is helping reverse that and really be bringing our shoulders back, bringing our heads back, just reversing the everyday motion that we have, which is so predominantly forward base. Next is a glute thrust. So you can see I'm making sure my toes are lifted and I'm driving down with my heels before I get going. If you can't feel this in your glutes and you're feeling it in your hamstrings, really suck in and engage your core. So if your core is relaxed at all, it's going to be really hard to target your glutes, as well as if your weight's in your toes and you're pushing off with your toes, it's going to be really hard to engage those glutes. Because you have to suck in fairly hard to get this movement right, this is really, really good for your everyday posture because many of us, again, have a very relaxed core. So this is just focusing on being heel dominant and having a tight core, which is going to make us more glute dominant, which is what we want because that's going to protect our lower back. The next exercise is a reverse frog pump. So soles of feet together, and you're just pulsing and lifting up with your glutes. So by having your feet at this angle, it takes your hamstrings or the backs of your legs out of the equation. So you can't really lift with your hamstrings, which is going to force your body to use your glutes, which is what we're wanting. So again, this is just focusing on glute dominance, which is super, super helpful for a good posture. The next exercise is probably one of the hardest if done properly, and it's called stomach vacuums. So every breath in, you're breathing in to your rib cage and you're breathing out of your core. So you're trying to create a vacuum effect in your core and make your core as small as possible. So you can see on the side of my stomach there, you can see the muscles really engaged. I'm really trying to tighten my core and make it as tiny as possible. And again, this is because many of us have a very relaxed core and not many of us hold that core in very tightly. So that's your inner core muscles that we're working on, which is going to cinch your waist in and give you a much better base to work off every movement you do. So by having a really, really strong internal core, you're going to do every other movement in life, whether it's in the gym or just every day, a lot better. The next exercise is bum tucks. So this time, we've done this one before, we're pulling our lower tailbone around with our glute muscles. So you're not coming up and down with your arms or with your back. This movement is done just with our glutes. So you can see I'm letting them relax and then I'm tightening them. And that tightening of the glutes is rounding my spine and is pulling my bum under and raising my spine in an arch position. So this movement has to be done just with your glutes. If you're having a hard time, really try pulling the core in. So again, this is just going to help make us more glute dominant and make us more aware that our core does need to be engaged in order to get that glute dominance. Okay, the next exercise, we're raising our opposite arms and opposite legs and trying to keep a very balanced, very steady core while we do this. So you're going to be feeling engagement in your upper back, in your glutes, and holding a nice tight core throughout this whole motion. The biggest thing to focus on is making sure that your stomach is staying pulled in, your belly button's up towards your spine, and you're moving side to side as little as possible. So you're wanting to keep that lower back as flat as possible. I'm not doing the best job here, but you really want to focus on keeping it nice and level throughout the entire movement. So think of balancing something on your lower back. And again, this movement is opening up our posture and strengthening our upper back and our glutes. The last exercise is a modified dead bug. So this is basically the same idea as walking or running, and it's just making you mindful of how your legs are raising. So are you raising them with your hip flexors and with your knees and your quads, or are you pulling each leg up with that core? So that's what I'm trying to get you to do in this movement. You want to be raising your legs up using predominantly your core. And to get that, you really have to have your core pulled in and you really have to have it engaged. And that's the whole point of this exercise, is to create that engagement and to create the mindfulness of having that tight core.